In 1988, the Japanese video game company Data East lost a crucial court case against the American video game company Epix Incorporated, whose recent game World Karate Championship was, Data East claimed, too similar to Data East's own 1984 game Karate Champ, to the point of potential copyright infringement. The courts disagreed, ruling against Data East after deciding copyright did not protect the general ideas and gameplay style of Karate Champ, a decision that most likely helped spur on the subsequent fighting game craze of the 90s, as Karate Champ was widely seen as the influential game that popularized the genre, a genre Data East now considered as largely built on clones and ripoffs of their original game. So you have to assume Data East was aware of the irony when, 6 years later in 1994, they found themselves on the other side, now the defendants in a similar court case regarding potential copyright infringement that was almost assuredly a result of that fighting game boom their '88 court loss had guaranteed. This time around, it was the much larger, much more powerful video game company Capcom, who argued Data East had infringed on their copyright, with Data East's 1993 arcade fighting game Fighter's History, which Capcom claimed was little more than a clear knockoff of their wildly successful '91 game Street Fighter II. In Capcom's eyes, it was an important time to protect their intellectual property. Street Fighter Mania had hit such a peak that they were preparing to release a big blockbuster movie adaptation, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, later that year, and they had already seen the potential for marketplace-confusing media ripoffs, as '93 had seen the release of a Hong Kong movie, Future Cops, that was heavily inspired by Street Fighter II, but made without Capcom's involvement or permission. In Capcom's opinion, the case against Data East seemed open and shut. After all, Data East had acknowledged the design documents for Fighter's History made several direct references to Street Fighter II, and, quite frankly, anyone who played the two games could immediately see how closely the Fighter's History characters, backgrounds, and overall style seemed modeled on Capcom's game. But as blatant as the copy may have been, Data East, remembering their loss to Epix 6 years prior, were themselves confident the same logic would win out, and they were proven correct. The court ultimately ruled against Capcom. Judge William Orrick Jr. cited a legal principle called the merger doctrine, which states courts should not grant copyright protection in cases where it would essentially allow someone to hold a monopoly over an idea. Further, Data East successfully argued the disputed elements of Fighter's History that Capcom claimed had ripped them off were simply savoir-faire, a term meaning elements so obligatory in a particular genre that it's almost necessary to include them to fully depict the scenario. The Capcom vs. Data East case was seen as a landmark decision in the video game world, expanding on the principle that generic similarities between games are allowed under copyright law, and, according to some, making it near impossible for video game companies to win copyright lawsuits against potential infringers. While that might sound like a nightmare to companies trying to protect their IP, such as Capcom, Chris Kohler of the video game website Kotaku argued a more positive outlook on the decision years later, saying it prevented a potentially chilling regressive effect on game creation over the subsequent years, instead allowing video game genres to grow and develop through imitation and iteration. And it's hard to claim Capcom was ultimately too hurt by their loss. While Fighter's History is largely forgotten today except for the court case, Street Fighter II and the overall Street Fighter franchise continued to be wildly popular and wildly lucrative for Capcom. Though it is amusing to note that 15 years later, when Capcom decided to once again bring the property to the big screen, they did so with a movie that, similar to Future Cops, arguably felt only slightly inspired by the original game, crafting a movie that many fans might argue felt less like Street Fighter II than even Fighter's History had. The year is 2009, and Capcom and Hyde Park Entertainment are ready to release a new cinematic take on one of the most popular video game properties of all time, and in the process hopefully launch the next big action movie franchise with Street Fighter: Legend of Chun-Li. Welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris. And before we go any further, Trev, I would like to read you an excerpt from one of our most acclaimed modern philosophers. So if you bear with me,
please. I like when we get a little classy here in highfalutin. So yes.
Okay, here we go. Ayo, I been on, bitch, you been corn, Bentley tints on, Fendi prints on. I mean, I been storm, X-Men been formed. He keep on dialing Nikki like the Prince song. I been on, bitch, you been corn, Bentley tints on, Fendi prints on. Ayo, I been north, Laura been croft, plates say Chun-Li, drop the Benz off. Now, Trev, that is obviously from the song Chun-Li by Nicki Minaj in her album from 2018, Queen.
Yes.
And one of my I mean this one of my favorite songs by her. I do love this song. So yeah, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, I quite like Nicki Minaj. So
same.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously very apropos, So, what if this had nothing to do with like the rest of the episode? We just make that our thing now, where we always start with a Nicki Minaj song.
Honestly, I would be for it.
Yeah. No, obviously that is appropriate because we're chugging right along here into the second episode of Fighting Video Lames. Hadouken! Where we are looking at failed adaptations of fighting video games. And this is kind of fun whenever we do these right in a row, looking at 2 attempts to kind of try and get the same franchise going. Mm-hmm. It'll be really fun, I think, to compare these two, because last time we looked at the infamous disaster that was the Jean-Claude Van Damme, Raul Julia Street Fighter, a movie that I'd say both of us were just kind of perplexed by. It kind of confused us. I think this one will probably be a little easier to wrap our thoughts around. But this is so obviously that movie did not take off as covered in our last episode. But a few years later, they decided to try again, and that is why in this episode we are looking at 2009's Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li. Chris, why don't you tell us about this one with the hyphen name and everything?
Yeah, of course. It is directed by Andrei Bartkowiak. He directed Romeo Must Die, Exit Wounds, Cradle to the Grave, Doom, The Rock, one.
A movie, thankfully, we don't have to cover.
No, yes. He's also a cinematographer for a few kind of like big movies, so I wanted to list these off too. Terms of Endearment, Twins, Speed, Species, Dante's Peak, and U.S. Marshals. So this guy has some credits to his name. I just wanted to kind of get that out on Front Street here first.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of blown away just to look at his biography and see that like one of the main things it says is he was known in the 80s for his partnership with director Sidney Lumet, because he shot 11 of his films, when he was a cinematographer. And so I want to point out, Sidney Lumet did not die until 2011. So it makes you wonder, did Sidney Lumet, as in solidarity with his former friend and collaborator, did Sidney Lumet sit down and watch Street Fighter: Legend of Chun-Li? I like to imagine he did.
Yeah, and then it killed him 2 years later. This is written by... this is a weird one, okay? And I have a little bit of a sidebar here for this one.
Yeah.
Because... in the movie, there's one sole credited writer, Justin Marks, who co-created and wrote the acclaimed, amazing, awesome FX series Shogun. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about this movie, but quite the change of pace, I would say. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But then also I'm on IMDb. And it shows, of course, the creators of the video game Street Fighter and that. But then it has another writer here, Malcolm Harris. So I looked into this guy. He has no notable credits. He's a first-time screenwriter. And I went to his bio in IMDb. And I don't know if he wrote this or somebody else did, but I gotta read this to you. Malcolm Harris is an award-winning comic book writer and artist, game designer / screenwriter, and pop culture blogger. One of the few African-American pop culture icons, Malcolm is a frequent guest at conventions and bookstores and is the imaginative mind behind a world of diverse characters, including Youthquake, The Witch Girls, Princess Lucinda, and Adventures Born. He's an avid cook, social gamer, LARPer, and all-around pro nerd. One of his trademarks, he writes great female characters. So I thought I wanted to bring that to the table. So I don't know who Malcolm Harris is. I don't know if he's real. But he is credited on IMDb, and I don't know, whatever. I just, any thoughts?
I just think it'll be like, yeah, I don't know. I've never heard of this guy, and I was certainly more aware of the fact that this was, written by Justin Marks, which is a little bit of a head scratcher, when you consider, as you said, how amazing Shogun was, which of course he created and co-wrote with his wife. But it was also a screenwriter on Top Gun Maverick, which I wouldn't call like the most amazing screenplay in the world, but definitely like a very capable. This is like almost like the ultimate example of how to create a very like just standard but working Hollywood blockbuster, so we always like whenever there's these like mystery writers that are like uncredited or whatever, there's obviously a lot of arbitration and kind of mystery that we can think about, but as we talk about the film, it'll maybe we can make our own speculation about how much of this is Justin Marks and how much this is the mysterious Malcolm Harris and his amazing female characters,
like Youthquake. Okay.
Yeah.
The budget of the film is $50 million. Domestically, it made just under 9, and then worldwide, just over 12. So this is one of those all-around critically and financially destitute films, I would say.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which has to be, and we should just say right off the bat, before we get into our thoughts on it, it just has to be considered, more embarrassing, obviously, because not only is it like a second attempt to get this franchise going, but it's a second attempt to get this franchise going in the midst of unlike the first one, this is like post MCU starting up. This is like the world is ready for these kind of like more, genre, big franchises, or you would think. And so the fact that at a time where everyone's like, okay, we're kind of more into this like nerdy stuff now than we were in the mid 90s, this is like an attempt to say like, oh, don't worry about that Van Damme one. We'll get it going right this time. And instead they fall on their face even like, in an even bigger way. And we should say this is again, Capcom being quite involved with the movie. So just wrong lessons learned, obviously. We'll talk about it. With, like I said, this isn't me giving my thoughts away. Just you have to look at the financials, like the financials and the overall critical response, and realize that they apparently did not learn their lesson. In fact, they learned the wrong lessons from the last one.
Oh yeah. And if you haven't listened to the Street Fighter from 1994 episode, please do. We give a little bit more backstory into this whole theme that we're doing, fighting video lames, and a little bit more history on what we, how we enjoy these arcade games, these fighting games, Street Fighter in general. And then also in that episode, we talk about, we saved where Street Fighter in 1994 left off in relation to this film getting going. So typically at the end of every episode, we like to say, well, what's next? Well, we left it for this episode, but just definitely go check that one out. I personally really love that episode. So
yeah. And before we even get into that, can I just take a moment? Because I realized I should have mentioned this last time, and I was kicking myself for forgetting about it. And I think it's actually, maybe it's more appropriate to talk about it this time, because, and you'll see I'll explain that maybe a little later, because what I forgot to mention in the Street Fighter episode, which was of course made in 1994, was that in 1993 in Hong Kong, there was actually 2 movies that were heavily inspired by or featured sequences heavily inspired by Street Fighter. And that is the Jackie Chan film City Hunter, which was an adaptation of a popular like manga series that's also been done into a couple animes. So it's this like really kind of like over-the-top comedic Jackie Chan movie where he's like this total like kind of piece of shit like PI who ends up on this cruise ship fighting all these bad guys. But there's a really infamous sequence, and I really implore anyone, I mean, I love this movie in general. I would say if you like Jackie Chan, in particular his Hong Kong stuff of the 90s and 80s, go check this movie out. But if not that, just go watch the sequence. There's a really infamous sequence where him and Gary Daniels are fighting, and they end up in the arcade of the cruise ship, and Jackie Chan gets thrown into a Street Fighter 2 machine, and suddenly he gets electrocuted, and the rest of the sequence becomes the Street Fighter 2 fantasy sequence where Gary Daniels is suddenly dressed as Ken, like the full-on Ken like costume from the arcade, and then Jackie Chan stands up and he's Guile. And he's got like he looks like Guile from the game. He's got the full like weird blonde haircut. He's got the outfit on. And then his 2 comedic sidekicks, they come in and they are turned into Dalsim and I'm trying to remember who the other one is. I think it's Blanca maybe. And then as the sequence goes on, Jackie Chan also then becomes later on Chun-Li. And the crazy thing about this is like Jackie Chan's Chun-Li is actually like super game specific. Like the whole sequence, they use the game sound effects, they use the actual moves, they port in like when they do the special, like in Gary Daniels as Ken is doing the Hadouken, they put in the actual animation of the Hadouken from the game. And then like Jackie Chan, every time he does a move, he does the little like Chun-Li dance and poses that she would do after she wins a fight. So it's actually kind of amazing to see Jackie Chan play maybe the most screen accurate Chun-Li ever. So that's like a really fun sequence. Cool. And then the same year, there's also another Hong Kong film called Future Cops, which is like it's got Andy Lau, Jackie Cheung, not Jackie Chan, Simon Yam. This is a really bizarre but really fun film that's like loosely based on Street Fighter 2. When you watch it, you can tell how every character is a parallel for a Street Fighter 2 character, but they're keeping it just not Street Fighter enough to avoid legal problems, you know, but it's so clearly Street Fighter inspired. And it actually, again, it's like when you watch it, they use the actual special moves. Their costumes are very in line with Street Fighter. The fight scenes are very heavily influenced by Street Fighter. Very, very bizarre movie because the plot is like very, you know, just convoluted and crazy, but very fun to watch, especially if you're a Street Fighter fan. So I wanted to just point out that it was worth noting, I think, that in 1993, before the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, we actually had these two Hong Kong movies that, you know, traded in on the property as well. And actually, at least in the case of City Hunter, and then in some aspects of Future Cops, actually got quite a lot right with how they visually kind of like, you know, transported the game into the movies and kind of showed off some of the powers and stuff. So maybe that's worth thinking about as we talk about this movie, and in particular its differences from even like the Van Damme movie.
Yeah, or like it sounds like that movie incorporated Ryu and Ken, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So okay. We'll get to that. Okay, so as we said last episode, Street Fighter 1994 was like a pretty big success financially. So they did try to get a sequel going. You know, like why not? You know, critically it was like a pretty big flop. But back in 2003, Jean-Claude Van Damme is actually kind of attached still. And they're working on a sequel. There's rumors that Dolph Lundgren is cast with an unrevealed role. Unfortunately, Kylie Minogue is being recast. I think she's probably just way too big of a star at this point. And then Damian Chapa and then Byron Mann are reportedly in talks to return as Ryu and Ken. This one, we talked at length about that 1994 movie being like sort of kind of ashamed of the video game iconography and certain powers that were part of the characters, right, in the game. And this movie sounds like it would have allowed Dalsim to gain his stretching powers. I know that was like a big hang up for you. You're like, why not? Why not with those chemicals? Why not give him stretching powers right away? So it sounds like that was like kind of one of the big fantastical elements of that. I'm so curious how it would have looked because notoriously stretching powers, you know, case in point, the Fantastic Four movies, the last three, maybe even last four, have been horrible.
Well, wait till you see the Dalsim stretching powers in that City Hunter scene. I know exactly what you're talking about. Oh, also, it just popped into my head. Sorry, not to cut you off. Like, just because I don't want a correction corner next week, I just remembered that actually. Sorry, it's actually Jackie Chan. His first character he's E Honda, not Guile. It's his two sidekicks become Guile and Dalsim. Oh, but the Dalsim stretching power in that looks atrocious. So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right that it does sound like everything, like what little I've read about this one definitely sounds like it was kind of like let's try and make good on the fact that we didn't do everything we could have with the powers last time. So let's act like we're respecting it more this time. And
that movie just kind of fell apart. And
is your assumption, but when they say Dolph Lundgren in an unrevealed role, is your assumption that Dolph Lundgren would have played Bison? That's kind of what I think.
I think so. He has the gravitas for it. I'm sure he would have played it totally different, but at least having like a heavy hitter like Dolph go up against JCVD, like, I mean,
I think it would have been cashing in on like the Universal Soldier love, you know, and saying like, well, we're just transferring these two guys to these characters now. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
However, the property is put on ice, really. until a few years later when they start to, like everything, Hollywood just can't let something die, right? They need to put this to theaters and try again. And they have this idea in 2006, which is maybe the first time we're seeing this kind of idea. It played out a lot in the last 10 to 15 years now. It's taking a property built on ensembles and pre-existing IP, and then doing solo-based prequel character-focused origin stories. We're gonna do a G.I. Joe movie in time that did this, the Snake movie, the Snake Eyes movie, right?
Yep.
Right, so we'll have to do that. We already did Solo, a Star Wars story, so they tried there too and failed.
Well, we'll also do Bumblebee someday.
Will we do Bumblebee? That's a little bit of an asterisk on that one, in my opinion.
I mean, I feel like they planned to make Bumblebee sequels with Haley Steinfeld, and they didn't. But we'll talk about this later, I guess.
Well, yeah.
Well, you know what? We'll let the listeners decide. I would say yes, but yeah.
Coming
Look,
soon.
I'm trying to give you your, like, let's do a Transformers movie for you.
I know, but I don't want to admit that they're failures. Okay, that's the difference here. But anyway, in 2006, this is now getting off the ground. And they decide to look at Chun-Li as the character to start off this thing. Oddly enough, I have a quote here from the producer of this movie, Ashok Amritaj. Can I just read it to you? Is that cool?
Course.
Okay. So Amritaj had an interview with MovieWeb in October of 2008. And he says he believes that a large part of the failure of the first movie was the inclusion of too many characters. So, and as such, they really should just focus on this Chun-Li, right? So he says, we feel that in the Street Fighter world, there are 3 key characters, which are Ken, Ryu, and Chun-Li. So we hope this movie works, but we've taken Chun-Li, and this is a movie, Street Fighter, Legend of Chun-Li. So the Chun-Li movie we've gone with, and if it works, we hope to do Ken and Ryu and so on. But we would do Chun-Li, then we'd have Bison and Vega, and some of the Balrog and all that. He also goes on to say, like...
This is like Donald Trump is the producer. That's what it sounds like.
1,000%. Okay. You know what? I'll actually help you out with that. Okay, hold on. Chun-Li, Bison, Balrog, Vega, Maya, Cantana, I think have shown up in parts of the video game, but are not major characters. They're minor characters. At least that's what Capcom says to me. I don't know. I'm not into the minutia. And then there's Gen, so 7 or 8 characters. like it's so funny because he starts this quote saying, the failure of the first movie is too many characters. He rattles off 3 key characters, telling us that the 2 out of 3 are not going to be part of this movie, and then rattles off a bunch more characters, saying just a handful of fucking nonsense characters.
Yeah.
This guy's wild. So this, I don't know. This movie is also a product of the writer's strike. I do want to say that, so maybe I will give some help. Somebody didn't write his fucking words here either. I'm not sure. But this is an odd one because this Ashok Amritaj has no idea what he's talking about. He just has no fucking clue. And it's a shame because they hire Kristen Kreuk from Smallville fame.
You say Kreuk. I say Kreuk, but who knows? Nobody knows.
There's
no way to find out.
But she plays, is it Lana or Lana?
Lana.
So Lana Lang from Smallville. She actually leaves Smallville for this role. So I just want to say that out front because I get it, she's in this hugely successful show on the CW that has tons of acclaim. Like I grew up at a time where Smallville was like the quintessential kind of high school show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I grew up like with those. I didn't really watch Smallville, but like every girl I knew like loved that show. You know what I mean? Like everybody watched that show that I was like friends with. And I mean, I knew of Kristen Kreuk because she was hot. Like that's just my male lizard brain speaking on that one. But she leaves that highly successful show, and I totally get it because, like Trev said, this is the start of something new and different, spawning really from like Iron Man. You know what I mean? Like she's gonna be in a big Hollywood sci-fi fantasy driven IP infused Street Fighter remake, and it's about me, Chun-Li.
Yeah, and she had been on Smallville for a long time at that point too. We should point out she had done 8 or 9 seasons, I believe, and I don't know if she she was probably even looking ahead, being like, really, how much longer is this show gonna go? And I think it only goes for like 2 more seasons after that. But yeah, I mean. And I also think the show at that point, this won't surprise you to hear I did watch Smallville.
Yes,
It's been a long time, so I'm trying to remember where exactly. But like obviously at a certain point, Lois Lane does come in as a character. So like, the need for Lana Lang isn't as important anymore. So maybe she saw like, well, I'm not necessarily going to be the co-lead anymore. And this is what happens, right? I'm glad we're just bringing this up now because I certainly plan to talk about it because we have, in both of our lead actors here, I want to talk about like 2 versions of what Hollywood does with actors. And we can just start with the Kristen Kreuk one because this is something we talked about before, where when there is a TV star, like a hot TV star, like Hollywood starts salivating and they say like, can we transfer this person over to Hollywood? And it's just like this race to find like the right project for them. Like what's the thing, And we talked about this way back in our first episode with Taylor Kitsch is like great on Friday Night Lights. Everyone loves him. Let's give him John Carter and Battleship, right? And like turn him into a huge star. And it's just like, it's always a question of, is that person really as famous as they think they are? Are they ready to have that kind of like pressure on them to lead a huge blockbuster? This is a question. But yeah, I don't, as you said, I don't blame her for saying like, oh man, they're dangling like a lead role, a title role in front of me. Yeah. I could stick with Smallville on the CW, or I could go start this franchise. And as we said, like with the Marvel movies now hitting and everything, and like the way they were selling this is like, oh, there's gonna be all these solo films, and then they're gonna lead to like a team up film. Oh, that's exactly what Marvel's doing. Like I'm sure it was very, very tempting. So
big time.
Don't blame her. Yeah.
I felt really great. It's the first action movie I've ever done, so that was an experience for me, and I felt like there was a lot for me to learn and grow from doing this. The game was really popular when I was in late elementary school, early high school in Vancouver, so a lot of my friends were playing Street Fighter. I never played it because I didn't play any games except for math games on my computer, but I've seen a lot of it.
The other actor, who are you thinking about?
Chris Klein.
I wasn't sure because I don't know if he's an actor.
Well, this is what I think is interesting. Chris Klein is a pretty fascinating story, right? So, of course, the famous story about Chris Klein is he was a high school senior when Alexander Payne was looking to make election, and Alexander Payne just was like decided to actually scout some actual high schoolers in Omaha where they were going to make the movie, and they find this senior named Chris Klein who does an audition and kind of blows everybody away, and so they cast him as Paul in election, and he's amazing playing like a dumb student. It's a great performance, and Hollywood goes, oh my god, like we just found this diamond in the rough. And it's right at the time where Hollywood is saying, what we want to get back to is kind of like 80s sex comedies. And so there's like a market for a guy like him, right? So he gets segued right into American Pie, and we're kind of off and running, and then he gets like a 2001 he has Say It Isn't So, which is kind of in the same mold, with him and Heather Graham. Then American Pie 2, and it's just like, oh, it's okay, we did it. We took this, we plucked this high school kid out, we found his place, right? We found what he's good at. And here's where this is where Hollywood annoys me, right?
And you know what I'm going to say about the next credit.
Well, I know what you're going to say, but I think it's also indicative of like what I just said. We found what this guy is good at. He's good at this kind of thing, but can we just let it lie there? No, never. Let's see. Could he also be an action star? And so let's give him the lead in Chris's favorite movie and favorite theatrical experience of all time, Rollerball in 2002.
Oh man, Rollerball. It is documented, I think, on this podcast, but definitely. Oh no, it definitely was because we talked about McTiernan. So yeah, Rollerball is in like my top 5 worst movies of all time. All time. So.
Well, you see, you hit the pod ramp and jump, and then I cross under and go, and then you shot in the free throw, and then you did the 440. So I wasn't sure, but I think you scored the touchdown.
Got it.
And that's the problem. Like, so Rollerball is so bad and so reviled that it dings him, right? Like, really, really kind of bad. Same year he's in We Were Soldiers. So again, it's like, well, can we put him in a more dramatic role? And I actually kind of like We Were Soldiers. I think it's a decent, Vietnam movie. I wouldn't say he's one of the strengths of it. So it's like, well, like we knew what he was good at. Now we're trying to stretch him into different territories. Can he be action guy? Can he be drama guy? And none of that is really working for him. And then as you get a little further into the 2000s, that whole sex comedy thing burns out quickly. Mm-hmm. So Hollywood is just kind of like left with, and I think this is what happens, is Hollywood's kind of just like left flailing, but we've put so many eggs in the Chris Klein basket. We don't want to give up on him. This guy's still around. And so it just kind of becomes this like, what else can you do? Where else can we try? What can we do with them? And eventually we just fall right back around to, by 2009, it's like, well, maybe we'll try the action thing again. Like, let's see if he can be an action lead. Rollerball didn't quite work, but maybe if he's the co-lead, we can try. So it's kind of like just trying to get this like return investment on this idea they had way back in the early 2000s. We were sure this kid's a star. Damn it, we're gonna make it happen, and they just keep trying.
So we don't like making fun of actors.
Uh-huh.
We never ever want to make fun of actors.
No,
but
it's not. You don't come to the show for that.
No, definitely not. But Chris Klein, his career is like beyond me.
Yeah,
and you're going through it actually quite well, and you're actually selling me on the idea of why. Because for so long I've been like, why?
He is legit good in Election. Like, you can watch that and be like, oh, I get it. I can get why they want to try more with this kid. It's just like, the actor's name escapes me, but it's the same thing, right? They found that kid at high school for The Holdovers, like last year, and he was really good. And now it's a question of what's going to happen with him next. And I know right away, I think he's going to play Anthony Bourdain in like the Anthony Bourdain biopic. So we'll see, right? But it's obviously it's kind of exciting when you find these young talents. It's just a matter of, do you then handle that correctly, and do you give them the right projects to sustain that?
I don't want to step on my thoughts on the movie, but I will anyway.
Well, I don't think, everyone knows the Chris Klein performance in this is already kind of infamous, so I don't think it matters if we talk about it here.
Gangland homicide? I love this job. Call me Nash. New Year's come early? Yeah, Last Supper. And he serves them their own heads. You just inherited a big problem.
Get used to it. Your new roommates. Spent the last 3 years of my life chasing around an organization called Shadow. Those bodies piled up in the harbor. They were the heads of the ruling crime families of Bangkok, correct? Uh-huh, right? And now they're all dead except for one. His name's Bison. And I've tracked him through 11 major cities on 4 continents and never come close, not once. This guy walks through the raindrops, and anybody that's against him is either dead or on their way. Now he's the last man standing. You don't want a ticket to this dance, detective.
Chris Klein has zero irony in his performances. And I say that because I genuinely believe that he thinks he's giving it his all.
This is interesting because I have one of my notes that I've written in front of me is, so you just answered, you just gave your answer, but I have this question written. Is Chris Klein giving a bad tough guy performance, or is he trying to make fun of tough guy performances? And your argument would be that he doesn't have that irony bone in his body.
He doesn't have it in him. I've seen enough Chris Klein movies in my day to say that this guy is, he thinks he's fucking crushing it.
Yeah.
Charlie Nash, Interpol, hold your fire!
Okay. That's Chris Klein.
We'll have more to say. Don't worry.
We'll have more. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, there's not a lot of behind the scenes here. So, do you just want to jump in?
Yeah. Why beat around the bush? Let's just get to it.
In life, there is beauty, and there is terror. One must not overwhelm the other. To embrace both, you'll need the strength of a warrior, the stealth of a predator, and the wisdom of a master. Once you have found your power, you must decide what you fight for.
Chun-Li lives a luxurious, calm life with her mother and father in San Francisco, and is trained throughout her childhood in the martial art of wushu. One day, a local mobster kidnaps her father and presumably kills him. Years later, and after her mother succumbs to illness, Chun-Li embarks on a mythical quest to Bangkok to find Master Gen and take revenge on the powerful criminal mob boss known as Bison.
Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li. Chris, if you don't mind, I'm going to go first on this one.
Sure, please.
And this wasn't a first-time watch for me, amazingly. I have seen this before, not in the theater.
You say amazingly, but duh.
Well, I think, my memory is that my friends and I watched this exactly because the movie came out, obviously was pretty reviled, failed, but right away there was kind of talk about how you got to see the movie for this Chris Klein performance, right? It became a meme when like memes were still kind of a new thing. It was like everyone's like, no, you got to see Klein in this, and I think people were already making kind of like compilation reels of Klein, and we're like, okay, let's just watch the movie.
Charlie Nash, Interpol, hold your fire!
So, yes, Street Fighter: Legend of Chun-Li. I think we're going to talk a lot during this review about the differences between this and the Van Damme movie in terms of approach.
I think that's totally unavoidable, for sure.
Yes.
And we do try to avoid that. I will say for
we
other
do try,
listeners
but
that
I think it's
yeah.
I think it's important because I think it's fair. I think it's fair in this one because you can tell that this movie is a response to the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, right? Maybe the response to it, and it's definitely a calculated effort to do a different kind of Street Fighter movie. Like that's clear, right? And that's probably ultimately its largest failing.
I'm not the spoiler or anything, but one thing I do want to remind everybody that's on the website is you forget about that old movie. You forget about that old movie and don't worry about it. This is an action-adventure origin story about one of the kicking-ass females that's ever existed in video games, and that's what it is.
I certainly hope it doesn't erase the memory of the older film, because the older film is terrific. This is just completely different. What Ashok and Patrick and Andre wanted to do was, the producers and the director, was to make a really fresh take on the whole thing, but still keeping to the core of what Street Fighter is. And I think that's what we really did, and that's what we aspired to do.
Once you read the script and see the team involved, it's not going to be the same thing. It's not even close. I think it's a completely different franchise.
You and I have watched a lot of really bad movies, and we always do this, and I think there's been a couple times where is this the worst movie we've watched? I'm not here to say Street Fighter: Legend of Chun-Li is the worst movie we've watched, but I do think, I think it's, first of all, I'm going to say I think it's up there, but even if I don't say it's the worst, one we've watched, at least in terms of again, when we're talking about real movies and not stuff like Maximum Ride, right? So it's a Hollywood blockbuster with real talent behind it, a genuine IP that's really big coming from, a filmmaker that worked with Sidney Lumet. I'm not going to get over that. But if it's not the worst, it's maybe arguably the most misguided. This is a movie that makes almost every wrong creative decision at every point, in terms of casting, in terms of the changes it makes to the characters, in terms of misunderstanding its own IP. So this, as I said, is a different approach, right? They're well, let's try and make a realistic Street Fighter movie. Let's ground it and do this more down and gritty one that doesn't really have the iconography of the games. Let's make M. Bison, instead of a crazy dictator in a red leather, outfit, let's just make him a businessman, an evil businessman. Let's Chun-Li, we'll never put her in the Chun-Li costume. She's just gonna dress like a normal person the whole movie. Balrog is just kind of a heavy. We won't talk about his boxing background or anything. So it's that maybe it's more respectable. And we talked about this again last time about Capcom. Just whenever they want to make a Street Fighter movie, why are they just so embarrassed by their own IP and by just making what goes on screen the same as the video game? But this is that attempt to say, well, let's try and make it realistic and grounded, and maybe that brings respectability to it. And that's what pisses me off watching this, is I feel like you can sense them being this is going to be the more respectable version of Street Fighter because we're making it more gritty and realistic. The only slight compliment I can give this is that I talked in the last episode about how the Van Damme Street Fighter movie has this huge cult following who considers it one of the great bad movies. And I said, what kind of ruins that for me is you can tell sometimes the movie's trying to be bad. And I think that kind of takes away from the irony for me and makes it a little more aggravating. I honestly think this to me is a more entertaining bad movie because, like I said with the Mario Brothers movie we did in the past, this is a movie where I watch it and I think everyone involved really thinks they're making something cool. like they really think they're making something good and just flat out failing. And that to me is almost more entertaining on like an ironic bad level. So I almost have like a little bit more fun watching this one because it is even more like, what were they thinking? That's all just a long way of saying, I don't think this is very good. but curious to hear if, I don't know, maybe you were blown away by it, but let me know.
I've retitled this movie. Okay. Shit Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li. This is absolute ugly, amateurish junk. You mentioned Maximum Ride because I think that is like our go-to not a movie movies, right? I wrote this in my notes. This is giving me Maximum Ride vibes in the sense that it seems like the same creative team, but with Hollywood faces and more money.
Yeah.
This movie, in comparison to the 94 version, I mean, Leonard Maltin said it best. He says it makes the 94 movie look like Gone with the Wind. This one is there's no charm, there's no spirit, there's no energy. The action scenes are horribly done. Like they spent some time on them too, which is a shame. You know, I watched some clips on some behind the scenes, and you know, Kristen Kreuk did her damnedest.
I think that it's very challenging to take an action movie and create a character that's very human and relatable. So that was my first challenge, and then also making the action really believable so that game fans can come in and recognize their character and enjoy the fight sequences, because an action movie like this, it centers around fights, so they have to be really good.
I remember the move where she did like a backflip and then she kicked someone in the face. She did it for like 25 times. And of course, Dion, he's like the perfectionist. So both of them, is it okay? He said, well, okay, let's do it again. And then of course, the producer is standing on the sidelines like, come on, you know, it looks the same to me.
The stunt coordinator was great, and they all trained. They seemed to train a lot more for this movie than they did for the 94 movie, just because of like the absolute shitstorm that was the production of that film.
Yeah.
But it's a shame that, again, it's one of those horrible edit jobs that is taking away from every little ounce of excitement there is.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't write anything in my notes until 20 minutes in. And then my first note was, okay, we're 20 minutes in. This is just a total slog. Bison's nefarious, over-the-top nature is sorely missed. He's just evil businessman. Chun-Li's voiceover is flat and a total afterthought.
Yes.
Revealing to the audience that Chun-Li's dad is alive right away, rips away any drama that's going to happen later. And then the other stuff I said already. You know, I don't know about you, Trev, but when I sign up for a Street Fighter movie, I sign up for a buddy cop film, Will They, Won't They, between Chris Klein and Moon Bloodgood.
Nash loves justice, and that's why he's there. He's there to serve justice, and he's chasing after Bison, who we all know is the leader of the Shadowlau crime organization. So he's chasing after him.
What is this movie? Like, what is it? Like, it's not a Street Fighter movie. I'll tell you that.
It's weird because like on paper, it's not the worst idea in the world to make a Chun-Li movie, right? Like that's the thing is like as marble-mouthed and incoherent as that producer was, I kind of get where they're coming from. It's like if you're trying to think of a new way to do this, and they were right that we mentioned that last time that a big problem with the Van Damme movie was that there was too many characters. So there's actually something to be said for this idea of, actually, let's do this. Let's make a Chun-Li movie, then let's do a Ken Ryu movie, and eventually we'll get to the Street Fighter movie where they all come together, right? That's not the worst idea. The problem is if you're going to do that, it still needs to be based on Street Fighter. And I am not convinced this movie in the slightest is based on Street Fighter. You could show me this movie and tell me it was a pre-existing script and they just ported over the names of Street Fighter characters and I would believe you. Because at no moment does it really feel like you're watching the characters you know from the video games. Like I said, like M. Bison is the ultimate example. And this M. Bison is just a businessman who is, his ultimate scheme on this is a real estate scheme. And you can say, like, well, that's what they did with Lex Luthor in the Superman movies, right? Yeah, but even that was... I don't love that necessarily either, but even those schemes were like going to murder millions of people. So Lex Luthor still seemed very, very evil. And Bison in this is just trying to do a real estate scheme where he's really just trying to kick some people out of a few neighborhoods so that he can like plow the territory down and build like new homes for people to live in to make money. And that's it. Yeah. It's really sad too, because Neil McDonough, who plays M. Bison, is an actor I like in general. And I've certainly seen him give better performances than this, but he's just given nothing to work with here because he's playing the most boring, nondescript version of M. Bison possible. He's just a guy in a suit who, at the end, suddenly it's revealed he can fight, and it's like, okay, why? I thought he was just a businessman, you know. Yeah. I guess we will talk about the dumb supernatural, slight supernatural origin they give him, but yeah, and then like Chun-Li, you know, as I said. I get where they're coming from casting Kristen Kreuk. As you said, she's the hot star of the moment in Smallville, but is she playing a character at all reminiscent of the Chun-Li I know from like the game or any of the previous adaptations? No.
Well, I think the most obvious differences lie in the physical appearance of the character. I don't look like Chun-Li's, like physically. I just don't. And then apart from that, I think that the story and her experience in the film seems to have more depth than what is in the game.
So it's just like you're watching the movie just consistently dumbfounded by why Capcom, of all people, thought this was the right approach to like rob every bit of iconography and everything magical from the game and just make this movie and say, yeah, it's Street Fighter, just deal with it.
Yeah. Even like Balrog, played by Michael Clark Duncan, you know, Balrog's a boxer, right? Mm-hmm. In this movie, he's like a security guard heavy guy, right? Yeah. And they give him like latex gloves that are black. Mm-hmm. Why not just give him red gloves? You know, like it's even to the smallest degree, they are choosing to go into a different direction at every turn. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like
that's what I meant. That's how I meant how every moment, every decision is the wrong decision creatively,
yeah,
it feels
yeah,
like.
Sure. Yeah. You're not gonna get him magically be wearing boxing gloves like they did in the 94 movie. But to give him any latex gloves at all and make them black, like it just doesn't make any sense. And then like we didn't even mention that Taboo is in this movie from Black Eyed Peas fame. Like Vega wasn't great in the 94 movie. But Taboo is playing Vega in this movie as an assassin level call Vega when we need him to really take out everybody kind of option, you know?
Mm-hmm. The mystique about Vega is that you don't know whether he's mortal or immortal because of his whole, just the energy that he presents, the way he speaks, you know, it's not clear whether he's, you know, is he from this planet? Is he, there's something more that you want to know about him.
And he's like dispatched immediately. Yeah. Almost like the movie's like, oh, Taboo's bad. We have to get him out of this movie immediately. Yeah.
He also looks terrible. Let's just say, like the mask looks like shit.
The mask is bad.
Like,
yeah, it's
the
really
claws
bad.
are bad. Like he doesn't look like Vega. That's the thing is, you said Vega wasn't great in the previous movie. I mostly agree, but guess what? He looked like Vega.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And he had the idea of Vega, which is that he wears the mask because he's so vain. He's trying to like make sure his precious beautiful face doesn't get cut. Like that's Vega. That is the Vega we know from the game. And like I said, this is just an assassin that wears a worse looking version of the mask. And then we see him once kill off some enemies of Bison in just a really quick moment. And then he shows up one more time to fight Chun-Li and just gets his ass kicked. And that's it. So.
And then this movie does something that is almost even worse. Maybe not worse, but maybe you'll go with me on this like thought experiment here. But worlds collide in this movie, okay? And the worlds of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter are here. Yes. The great Robin Shou is in this movie, who played Liu Kang in Mortal Kombat, and they bring him into this movie. Originally, Rick Yoon was cast, by the way, who's from he was like Diamond Face in Die Another Day, and he's one of the bad guys in Fast and the Furious. Yep. I love Rick Yoon. He's awesome. But he was recast for whatever reason. But Robin Shou is in this as Master Gen, who Chun-Li is on a quest to find to then train her in the art of whatever the hell, right? And he's like used to be friends with Bison, and then he realizes that Bison was evil, so he like he removes himself, and then he creates the Order of the Web, which should be rechanged to the Order of the Wig, because of the fucking wig that he's wearing. That is just absolutely atrocious. It's like not anywhere near it should be on his forehead for like the whole movie. But like, it's like embarrassing. I don't know. I just felt so sad that Robin Shou was in this. You know, like it was like I love that guy and I saw him, but it just was like, Liu Kang, stay in your lane. Don't be in this movie. This is ruining you.
It feels so calculated too.
Yeah,
right? Like let's put Robin Shou in it and be like, oh, we got the Mortal Kombat guy. I know what you mean though. I mean, I'll tell you when that hit me, and this probably, I don't know if you picked up on this at all or in doing the research, but there's one scene with an absolute, to me, like dead on like legend in this movie. And that is Pei Pei Chang. So, Chris, we talked a lot about how like I love martial arts and kung fu movies. That's like a passion of mine. And Pei Pei Chang, the great Pei Pei Chang, is actually known as cinema's first female action star. She was like the lead in like a bunch of like 60s martial arts movies. She was known as the Queen of Swords, and her like most known movies from that period is she starred in Come Drink With Me in 1966, and then in 68 the sequel Golden Swallow. But she made like a series of amazing martial arts movies. She also goes on to be in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So she had like a little comeback there. And then they stick her in this. She's in like one scene. She's the woman who's like in the shop that tells Kristen Kreuk about the Order of the Web. Right. And it's like, oh, Pei Pei Chang. Oh, cool. Oh, she's just in this one scene. And you can say like, oh, they're doing something really nice of using this like this martial arts Hong Kong action star legend. But at the same time, I'm just like, oh my God, she has to be in this movie. Like, it's just, and that's all they give her to do. Like, honestly, I would almost rather see at this point, like whatever, like 60, 70-year-old Pei Pei Chang play Chun-Li, and I'm just like watching this like, oh, she's just doing nothing. She just gives exposition and then she's gone. So it's like the same thing where I'm like, oh God, what a waste,
Yeah, nobody's doing anything. Like there's so many moments in this movie where like,
well, Chris Klein's doing something.
Charlie Nash, Interpol, hold your fire.
Yeah, he thinks he's going for the Oscar. I don't know. Like Chun-Li goes through her mystical training, and then her and Gen make like the Hadouken ball and whatever, and there's just like no reaction. This is the first time Kristen. You know this with me. When something fantastical, otherworldly happens in a film, and there is zero reaction by the main actor, it makes me it is like such a steep hill to climb for me after that, because you're telling me that now not even the people in the movie don't like these people don't even care. Then why the fuck do I care to see a Hadouken if like Chun-Li is like, oh, whatever. Like I just don't. It does nothing. I hate it.
That is the most baffling. One of the most baffling decisions in the movie, because I said when we did the previous episode, and again we have to make these slight comparisons because I do think this is reactionary. Yeah. But like one of the things that bothered me in the previous one was how it didn't have any of the supernatural powers, and in fact, whenever they would like tease them, they would like try to give them scientific explanations, and I was like, man, why are they so embarrassed of like the more mystical elements of the game, right? This movie seems like it course corrects it by finally bringing in some of the like mysticism, but it does it in the stupidest way possible by making everything else grounded and realistic. So you're exactly right that like, here's the problem you've created. If you're giving me an otherwise realistic world, then when mysticism comes up, people need to be amazed by it.
Yes.
If the entire world from the beginning was just full of people that were superpowered, then I would accept people like doing fireballs and no reaction, right? Because it's just a part of their everyday life. That's what you would do in like a normal Street Fighter movie. But this movie is like saying like, oh no, this is a real world for the first hour of the movie. Then a character shows a character how to make a fireball, and she goes like, it's like, what? Like, no, you have to like, if this has to be an incredible experience for her. But yeah, the fact that they just played off like nothing, that's like my least favorite kind of supernatural like stuff in movies, when it's just too sparse and treated too casually. Like it just makes no sense. Yeah.
And there's a bunch of those non-reactions, especially from Chun-Li. Like I'm not here to make fun of actors. And I think Kristen Kreuk is actually she's a successful actor, when she was the hot thing. And this might just come down to direction. I'm not sure, but she has no reaction to like anything, and she's on the hero's journey. She's the Jake Sully. I gotta watch from that. Remember that movie from 2009? Same year actually.
What's that movie? I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh, Jimmy Cams made it.
Titanic. That's the last movie he made, right? He hasn't done anything since.
Yeah, Alita.
Yeah. Coming soon on Fairly Franchise.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Kristen Kreuk is just like she's not reacting to anything. Like,
no,
I'm just okay. Spoilers. Well, actually, the movie spoils it by saying her dad's still alive, right? And then they get Chun-Li and her dad into a room together with Bison, and Bison reveals to her, "Hey, your dad's alive. I've held him captive for 15 years or whatever, and also I'm gonna snap his neck in front of you." And Chun-Li doesn't do anything. I'm telling you, listeners, 6 inches in front of her face. She's been on a quest to find her fucking father, and he snaps his neck in front of her. She doesn't scream. She barely cries. Again, if you don't care, then I don't give a fuck either.
I love family reunions.
Don't touch her. If you touch her again, you get nothing more from me. Do you understand?
Oh, I understand. You see, your father has been the milk of my business. But even milk has an expiration date.
No, don't.
I'm a man of my word.
No, please.
I promised him he'd have a chance to say goodbye.
No, please, no.
You will not stop me. Take the body away.
There's another moment like that earlier. It's not quite, I mean, obviously it's not quite as extreme as having your father's neck snap right in front of your face, but it's in the same vein where when she goes into this club, she follows Bison's like number one, like his assistant, this woman. So she's just for the first time on like her mission of revenge, right? She's been trained by Gen just a little bit, and she's starting to go out and try to become this like, vigilante. And she ends up following this villain into this club, and they have this bathroom fight. And I know you and I both love bathroom fights. I wouldn't call this one of the best ones ever either. but they have this bathroom fight, and that leads into a longer action scene where now the entire gang that's in the club is trying to get her, right? So it's all this henchmen coming after her, and she ends up killing one of them. She takes a gun and shoots the henchman in the chest, and I would say that would be murder in my eyes. And I was just thinking, in the reality of this film, that is the first time Chun-Li has ever killed someone. And in fact, she certainly did not go her entire life ever expecting to kill someone. She was planning to be a concert pianist. This is all like a completely unexpected, role in her life, that in just the past few days, she's realized that she has to join this Order of the Web and become a hero. And she just murdered a man. And I would think she would react to that, but she does not at all. She just shoots this guy in the chest, gets up and runs away. And it's like the movie doesn't even hang on that. The movie doesn't even play at the idea of like maybe that would get to her, or maybe that's a moment that changes her forever. And it's just like, well, okay, so does that just mean she's a sociopath? Like if she's just like totally, I know he's a villain, but still, you just killed a man. Like that should be a big deal. The
way she does it too is like a gun that is like, she pushes the gun so like touching the guy's chest. Mm-hmm. Like it's not from a distance. She is right up close and personal, puts the gun right to his chest, touches it, kills him. And then walks away like nothing. And I don't think Trev is even saying, like, I don't think you're even saying, oh, I need some sort of realistic character drama arc in my Street Fighter movie. However, it breaks the laws of just storytelling. Like you have something ripe. You have something right there that you can hook onto for, give me like 5 minutes of drama in this movie for her reeling with it or thinking about it at least.
Because you're presenting this as the version of a Street Fighter movie that would do that, right? That's the thing. It's like I kind of almost am saying I need some kind of like drama there because you're supposedly giving me the more grounded, dramatic version of Street Fighter. Sure. So the fact that you then don't go through with that, just it sticks out even more like a sore thumb. Again, if this movie is entirely over the top the entire time, if this movie was silly and had a sense of humor and was just like, you know, some like a nonsensical action movie, like a Crank or like Shoot 'em Up or something.
Yeah.
Then when Chun-Li kills someone, I'd be like, oh, okay, whatever. But it sticks out here because you're like, whoa. That's really bizarre that this girl who just a few days ago thought she was going to be a pianist her whole life, she just killed a guy and she's like, whatever, you know.
Dude, another non-reaction. This is probably the last non-reaction that I have, or else I'll just be picking apart the entire performance. But Chun-Li has her arm hurt. You know, she gets shot in the arm. And then Gen is like, let's fix your arm. Hey, but first, get naked.
Yes. Get in this tub, yeah.
And get in this tub.
No, I promise this is part of it. I promise.
Yeah. hey, I'm the master. I know magic. And while she's naked in the tub with this strange man, Gen just takes her arm and fucking heals her arm in front of her face. And again, blank slate. Nothing in her eyes. Nothing to say. No, oh my God, Gen, I can't believe you healed me. Like, it is some fucking Rise of Skywalker bullshit. And, you know?
Yep.
There we go.
And for the record, whenever Chris compares something to Rise of Skywalker, it's not a good thing.
It's not. It's not. Yeah, this is a movie that I don't know if I have anything like good to say about it. I just found it. I know you said like maybe it's a better ironic watch than Street Fighter 94, and I understand what you're saying because I definitely think they thought this Chun-Li movie was, for all intents and purposes, better made.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know that they were thinking, wow, we're making something pretty good here. And we're not going to be silly, goofy fun times. We're making a real movie now with real Hollywood money in 2008, 2009. However, I don't know, man. Like, I just found this was just like a slog. Like, it was just like a bad movie made by people that don't know how to make movies, which is weird because you said this Andre guy worked with Sidney Lumet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a confounding experience because, like I said, it is like that's why I said I don't know if it's the worst movie, but it's certainly the most misguided. I'll stick with that because you just watch it and like even on just like we're talking about like big picture stuff, right? We're talking about its failures, like an adaptation of Street Fighter and like the bizarre decisions to like present these characters in this way. But even on just its own structure, like you mentioned the voiceover, which is so clearly added after the fact,
big time,
just to kind of cover up, you know, and like there's so many sequences where it's like really not even needed, and sometimes it even contradicts itself. There's a moment early on where in her like voiceover she says, like, she's talking about her and her family and her dad, and she's like, we moved around all the time, and then we see them like arriving when she's a really young girl to this home where she will live for the rest of the movie. Like for the next like 15 years of her life, she lives in this home. So I don't know what she means by we moved all the time, you know. So like the voiceover doesn't always match, and I'll just say it's just like so blank, and you can tell they called in Kristen Kreuk to do it like weeks or months later. But even on just like structural, the story makes no sense. And I know that's not the most like shocking thing to hear. Right. But Chris, let me ask you some important questions here, because you said the general crux of this movie is that when she's a small child, she sees this mysterious man named M. Bison show up to her house and kidnap her father. And as you said, the movie quickly reveals that her father has been forced into servitude for Bison. He is working for him, and Bison kind of dangles like, you know, someday maybe I'll let you see your daughter again. And he even gives her like updates. He's like, oh, she's, you know, she just had a piano recital, and they give him like pictures of it. Actually, it's very funny. They give him pictures of it and the audio, but not just video. But let me ask you a question. What exactly was Chun-Li's dad doing for Bison? Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if the movie answered that question? We see him in this room, like, you know, and he's been given a prison cell that allows him to, like, you know, put whatever picture he wants on the wall, so he makes it look like he's like in a forest or whatever. Right. But it never is explained what he does for him. The closest we get is that during the scene that you'd mentioned when Bison like kills him, Bison gives this very weird explanation. He tells Chun-Li, "Your father has been the milk of my business, but even milk has an expiration date." And I was just like, what? Is that that's some like idiom I've never heard before because I don't know what that means.
Has he been milking her dad?
So I was like, is he just like IT support for Bison? Like, is that like, on that same regard, can we briefly talk about the really weird like mystical origin to give M. Bison?
First, before you go into details about that, can we just say what's even odder is that this vague Irish accent white man is supposedly trying to take back Bangkok because he grew up there in the slums.
Yes.
This guy is Neil McDonough, who is like probably in his late 40s in this movie. White as can be, with the whitest beard imaginable, and also the bluest eyes, and then his Irish accent seeping out all the time. But yet he grew up in the slums of Bangkok.
You know, I'm surprised you chose the landscape setting. I'd have thought of you as being much more of a big city man.
But a prison is a prison, Bison. No matter what's outside.
Show a prisoner the world, and all he sees are the bars on the window. You needn't be so cynical. Ah, home sweet home. Gorgeous, isn't it?
So how'd your meeting go?
Very well. Thank you for asking. I'm officially the only surviving partner of Shadalao.
Now, with saying that, tell me about this mystical origin.
Well, no, I want to stick on that just for just a moment because I have to go even further with that because that is very funny because I was watching this with my wife and we were talking about. First of all, I also think sometimes his Irish accent sounds more Australian, but even just in general, I was like, why is M. Bison Irish at all? Like, why did they make that decision? Right?
Yeah.
But then I asked that question in the movie too. Like, I mean, even just like conceptually, why make Bison Irish?
Sure.
But then, like within the movie itself, why make him Irish? Right. So on both levels, it's a head scratcher. And I'm like, well, why would this guy be Irish? And then they say, I asked that question, and then later on they mention, well, his parents were Irish missionaries, and Liz is like, well, see. And then they immediately show that his parents died when he was an infant, and he never knew his parents, and he grew up in Thailand. So it's like this movie seems to presuppose that accents are genetic.
Yeah.
That if you were born Irish, you will just have an Irish accent when you grow up, even though you were not raised by Irish people, you were not raised in Ireland. They never say he went back to Ireland. So yeah, again, what is this movie doing? But to continue that, as you said, so he is raised on the streets of Thailand. He becomes like he's this youth. Gets involved in like gangs as a kid in Thailand. Starts like getting involved in like organized crime and everything. Starts like rising his way through the ranks. But he decides, you know what? I can't be the biggest criminal. I can't be as evil as I want to be if I have a soul. So by this, they reveal that at some point he gets married, and his wife is pregnant. And to like seal his fate and to seal his destiny, he takes his wife to a mystical cave where he murders her and pulls the baby out of her womb and transfers everything good about himself into the baby, thus freeing his soul of any conscience so that he can go the rest of his life not worrying about having a pesky conscience.
Trev, just like Street Fighter 2.
Just like Street Fighter 2. the classic Bison origin we all know.
Ripping your baby out of your wife's womb in a cave. Anyway,
now again, this is where I get to like how the movie just makes no sense inherently within itself, because during the whole movie, like we learn that like Bison, like part of his plan is he's waiting for this package to be delivered, this mysterious package, and nobody knows what it is, and they're like waiting to see what it's going to be, and it turns out to be his daughter. His daughter, who has apparently been raised in Russia, is Russian. And he finds his daughter, and then we were told that he needs his daughter because she is his weakness, because she has the good parts of him inside him. So I'm already confused. But then what does he do with the daughter? He doesn't kill her, which is what I expected. Instead, he just brings her back to his compound and says, like, I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna keep you here. He's basically gonna keep her as a prisoner, but she accepts him right away as their father. She seems to like immediately like be happy to see him. He seems happy to see her. And so I'm just like, again, I have questions. First of all, Where was his daughter? How did he lose track of her in the first place? He couldn't have lost that much track of her because he has modern day pictures of her in a locket. So clearly he's been following what's going on with her. Why does he have her delivered in a shipping container? What does it mean that she is his weakness? What does it do for him to have her back?
Whoop-de-doo! What does it all mean, Basil?
How is his soul? You know what I mean? Like I'm sorry, I could ask three of these questions.
And also, like if he's all his goodness has been ripped away out of him and into her, why would he even entertain the idea of her being in his presence? Like at all. Like at all. No, you could go on for another 5 more minutes with questions.
Yeah.
It is, you know what? That's Malcolm Harris right there. I think we found his his additions to the movie. It's nonsensical. It's nonsensical, and if you have half a brain, you're sitting there just scratching it, you know?
Yeah.
And that is not a good thing to have in your good versus evil, you know, hero's journey film. It's just, you know, it's okay to be a little bit simple, you know? I say that to myself every morning in the mirror. It's okay to be simple. But like in a movie like this is why some of the great hero's journey films work so well, is it's an age-old character arc and story. And this one just adds too much without knowing what it's doing anyways. So yeah, I don't know. Again, it's not a Street Fighter movie. You know, I don't know what this is. I don't know what Bison is after. I don't know why Chun-Li doesn't care about her dad being killed in front of her. I don't know why I'm watching Detective Maya and Nash flirt and will they, won't they? I don't know why that's half the fucking movie that we barely even mentioned that, but like the police stuff is half the movie. What is that?
We mentioned the Detective Maya, played by Moon Bloodgood, which amazingly is not a Street Fighter character. That's her real name. That's actually his name, Moon Bloodgood. Her real name sounds more like a Street Fighter character than the character from Street Fighter she's playing. Yeah.
Like, I don't know the decisions that got us here. And I know you had mentioned that Capcom still had their, you know, grubby hands on the making of this movie, but like, did they? Like, I don't even know. Like, the 94 movie is much more of a Street Fighter movie than this is.
It is. Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. But that's what I mean is like this again. This is, you know, so I didn't bring this up last time because I didn't want to color this too much because I'd already seen this movie and I knew what was coming. But you asked me in the last episode, you know, we kind of had a slight little debate or, you know, like not argument, but a debate about was Capcom embarrassed by the source material?
Right.
And my thinking on that was colored by the fact that I also knew they were involved with this one. Right.
Okay.
So it's like they've made 2 movies now based on Street Fighter where they're kind of trying to like reinvent their own property for some reason. And like this one is like the even more frustrating one. And I do think they were involved because I think the proof of that is I do think it was Capcom's decision to pull in these deep cut characters. You know, I don't think I don't think the other writers would have said, hey, let's use Gen and, you know, Charlie Nash and Maya, who, as we said, are like kind of like more minor characters from the overall franchise. You know, they come in later games. And because I do watch the movie and I think to myself, like, okay, as broken as this movie is, let's say it's just the same movie. Why not have Gen be Ryu? And why not have Charlie Nash be Guile, right? Wouldn't that like make more sense?
This goes back to the quote by Ashok Amritaj. And like how he says that the Street Fighter universe has 3 key characters. You know, Ken, Ryu, and Chun-Li. And I understand. Oh, this is your classic Hollywood thinking of like the cart before the horse, right? Okay, well, we have the 3 main characters that need to lead this franchise. So that means we can get 3 movies out of this, right? You know, it's not about, hey, why don't we have a movie with all 3 together? You know, and all 3 origin stories together. And then we create a trilogy of films around this trilogy of characters. Instead, we're going to try a Chun-Li movie, then a Ryu movie, then a Ken movie, and then bring them together. I'm sorry, but that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And even at the end of this movie, there's a tease that there's a tournament going on, right? And Ryu and Ken are going to be there. And I'm just like, oh my God, guys, you had the movie. That's the fucking movie right there. It's the tournament. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand why these two characters are ripped away. You know, this is the first Street Fighter film, live action or animated, that does not include them. I fucking wonder why this failed. You know, like, it's
funny because this is the exact same conversation we had after the last, like, the reboot Mortal Kombat movie, which made the same exact mistake. That movie was lucky enough to be released like as a COVID movie, so like they were able to pretend it was like a hit and still make a sequel, you know? Which it sounds like the sequel now, they're like, oh yeah, well, don't worry, we're getting to the tournament now. It's like, yeah, thanks, we wanted that in the last one. But this one had to actually have real box office, so it never got the chance. And like, let's push that even further, Chris, because we haven't mentioned, spoiler alert for Street Fighter Legend of Chun-Li, you're teasing that we're going to get to the tournament now, but guess what? They've killed Bison.
I know.
like your big villain, who's supposed to be like, you know, the antagonist for the entire tournament, is dead. And by the way, can we talk about that death? Because again, this goes back to I said this earlier as a joke, but now that I think about it, I think the movie is saying that Chun-Li is a sociopath because she fights Bison, and again, out of nowhere, Bison, who has only been shown as like this businessman, suddenly is like her again and hers equal in fighting, right? Yeah. So they have this fight, and he eventually she defeats him, and he's like kind of hanging off this like balcony, this ledge, and his daughter's brought out by Nash. So at this point, Chun-Li and Charlie Nash have teamed up. They've realized they're both on the side against Bison, so he's trying to help her, even though she's kind of a vigilante. And she's like, well, go rescue his daughter. We got to get his daughter out of here. And they're pulling the daughter out, and they bring the daughter out, and the daughter looks up, and Chun-Li has her legs like wrapped around Bison's head, and she like locks eyes with the daughter. And me, a thinking person with a soul, and also a person who knows how like storytelling usually works, I think, oh, well, Chun-Li is going to see the daughter seeing her father there and spare him, right? And like there's not a world where Chun-Li would want this young girl to watch her father, who she does love. Like, we've shown that she has no ill will towards her father. She wouldn't want to like snap her father's neck in front of, but no, that's exactly what she does. She twists his head all the way around right in front of the daughter. And then she goes up to Nash and she goes, make sure she gets what she needs and she has a great life. Yeah, because you just traumatized her for her life by twisting her dad's head around in front of her. It's insane.
I mean, you're now making more sense why Chun-Li doesn't react to shit in this movie. She is the villain. She needs to be locked up. You know, lock her up.
She is a menace to society.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I will say that is the one thing that I did like, the brutality of spinning his neck around. I was like, oh wow, okay, I can't believe they went there. You know, does it fit? Yeah. I'm not sure, but I did. That's my there you go. There's my one positive.
Yeah, I'm not even sure it fits with, like, again, like, I'm not the biggest Street Fighter 2 like lore expert in the world, but again, like, even to me, like, the version of Chun-Li that I kind of know and think of is not the kind of person who like murders someone like that. No. You know, like it just doesn't seem right even for that character. But can I just mention one other, like, because it's the one other thing I have in my notes, because we're talking about like the kind of incompetency of the movie. Sure. And the other version of that really makes me laugh, and it happens very, very early in the film. We kind of bypassed it, but I want to be delicate about this the way I talk about it, because it should say, like, so Kristen Kreuk being chosen to play Chun-Li. To be fair, Kristen Kreuk's mom is of Chinese descent. Her dad's of Dutch descent, right? But she does have Chinese heritage. However, I would say that visually, I would say we see other actresses play Chun-Li, younger actresses. We see her grow up, and I would say Chun-Li on screen appears to become less Chinese as she gets older. And there's even a moment where they really kind of screw that up, and like there's a dissolve fade where we see like a young version of Chun-Li on screen at the same time as Kristen Kreuk now as the modern Chun-Li, and it is so clearly like, what happened? Why has she become so much more white and Dutch as she has gotten older? It's just, I can't believe they put the two on screen together like that and show that off even.
Yeah, probably not the right decision to dissolve it. However, Kristen Kreuk is Chinese, so, you know.
Yeah. I just she does.
Yeah.
They don't do a very good job casting younger actresses that look like her. That's the more even simple way to put it.
Yeah, like I don't want to color this as some sort of whitewashing thing. Like I know you're maybe trying to say that a little bit, but I would push back on that. But because
I'd say it's only It's not whitewashing, but it's like
it's bad filmmaking.
It's bad filmmaking. Yes, you're not casting actresses who look the same at all. And
No.
Yeah.
All three are distinctually different people. Yeah. One thing on the subject of Kristen Kreuk's looks, I'll say, the ultimate evidence of pretty privilege was her getting free street spring rolls. Yeah, I like that.
It is surprising that a movie like this, and I kind of almost want to give it credit for this, but again, it's like I don't even know. Like, should this be credit or should this be a mark against it for the kind of movie they're making? But like when someone who looks like Kristen Kreuk becomes like a vagabond on the streets of Thailand, we don't really get any scenes where like they try to play into the more potentially gross aspects of that.
Yeah.
And how she would be like treated by like the men on the street and everything. So it's kind of nice that the movie doesn't go that way. Like that's where you get the sense that the movie is trying to treat her as like a more respectable character, other than being a sociopath. But
twisting villains' necks right
now. But I think you're right though that like we don't like making fun of actors, but I mean she does seem out of depth in this movie. It's and again whether that's the director's fault or whether it's the script, it is telling that this was her one and done kind of shot at being like a movie star, right? She retreats back to TV after this, and to be fair, she's found her way back. I just found out, I didn't know, because we talked about how I'm so unaware of like what her hit shows anymore, but sure. She does have a show called Murder in a Small Town going right now, a Canadian show that has been renewed for a second season. It's on Fox here too, so she's done all right in the world of TV, but she does not go back to movies after this, really.
I think we've talked about this a few times now, but when you're part of an ensemble on TV and you get picked out to lead something, that is just a lot. It's a lot of pressure, and it's and
the failure often gets put on you, even though it's really not fair too.
Big time, and we see it with these. I think the closest example, especially in recent memory, is the Game of Thrones cast. This Game of Thrones cast keeps getting thrown into their own star-studded affairs, and they seemingly keep bombing. Emilia Clarke can't lead a franchise. What's his name? Jon Snow. He definitely can't. They won't even make his spin-off show. Like these. Rob Stark, that guy, his, that Amazon series, I don't think is coming back, that $1 billion show. It is tough to go from ensemble to lead. And that's why it doesn't happen that much, right? And when it does, it happens a lot, but that's why it doesn't have as many successes out there, I will say Chris Klein, same deal. I'm like, what the fuck is Chris Klein up to? And funnily enough, I said this to Trev a couple days ago. He's gonna be in the new Fear Street movie coming out in like a week, Prom Queen. So I look forward to seeing him doing his best.
I saw he also was the main villain in a season of The Flash.
16 episodes.
Either I had stopped watching by then, or he was so incredible that I was just so blown away by his performance that I forgot, because I don't have any memory of Chris Klein in The Flash. But yeah.
That's kind of all I got for this one. This is going to be one of our shorter ones, but.
I feel like people will be upset that we didn't talk more about Chris Klein, because that is the thing everyone loves about this movie. And sure. I will say, like, if you're gonna sit down to watch this movie, like I said, I think it sounds like you and I slightly disagree on this. Part of it is also very short again, so it's not like I felt like I wasted a huge chunk of my life watching this, even a second time. But if you're going to sit down and watch this as like a fun bad movie, it's pretty much you're locking in for the Chris Klein scenes.
Yeah.
But I'd also say you can just watch YouTube videos that are compilations of those scenes, and save yourself the rest of it, because honestly, he is the best part, by which I mean, he's the worst part, but as Chris said, it's like it is a performance that is so baffling and so bad that's why I asked that question, because it almost feels like it almost feels knowing, right? But the fact that it's not might make it even funnier. I don't know. It's just it truly is one of the worst tough guy performances, trying to be a badass performances you'll see in a major Hollywood movie. I've seen a lot of those in like bad cheap movies made for like $10, but the fact that this got through so many like filmmakers and people involved who should have known better, that's what makes it really stick out. So go watch that compilation. Save yourself the rest of the time.
Yeah. As for new Street Fighter movies, I mean, there was one supposedly in the works with Legendary, scheduled in the next couple of years, but it sounds like it's been pulled from the schedule in general, so who the hell knows?
It was supposed to be the Talk to Me guys, right? Like they were attached to it.
Right.
And I believe they dropped out, yeah.
Right. I wonder why.
It's an IP that I'm sure we will get another one. You can't let these things die. So there's too much to be there. But I would just say, here's a crazy idea to whoever ends up making the next, Street Fighter movie. Maybe make it about a tournament with all the characters we know and the stories from the video game. Just a thought.
Yeah, I agree completely. So we chug along. Failure to franchise fighting video lames. The next one is going to be a fun one. I don't know if we get criticized for this, but we are not unaware that we are two heterosexual white men talking about movies. And I know everybody scrambles for that, right? Like there's not enough. Mm-hmm. There's not enough of us out there. So it is not something we take lightly. So we've decided, you know what? Maybe if we do it, and this is how our brains work too. Okay, so just to make sure, everybody, we're allies. Number one. Okay.
Yes.
Number one, big allies. Okay. And when we realize we're doing a girl movie, we're like
the official term. Yes.
The official term is we when there's more than 2 to 3 girls in the movie, and which is funny because we just did Chun-Li and it's a self-titled girl movie, but alas, we all have our breaking points. Anyway, the next movie is a girl movie, and we're like, you know what? We should probably get a girl to join us, and so we're looking at another fighting video game in our Video Lame series, DOA, Dead or Alive, from 2006. Now, first of all, this is a famous game for exploiting women.
Yeah.
So we thought the best guest to bring back to the show, our first returner, our friend Jackie.
Yes.
Who guested on the Vampire Academy episode from a year and a half ago, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
So wow, yeah, Jackie, she was banging on Trev's door, hey, when are you gonna let me back in the show here? Yeah. I'm clamoring to be part of the show, and then Trev was like, Chris, what do you want to do? And I was like, DOA.
Yeah, we should say she had certain particular movies she really wanted to come back for, and instead we said we need a woman on DOA, Dead or Alive. And I can confirm this is not a movie she'd ever heard of. She knows nothing about the video game, but I showed her that I believe she watched the trailer, and I believe she understands why we feel like we might need the female perspective on this one.
Yes. That'll be a fun one. It'll be nice to break it up a little bit. We didn't even ask ourselves. Trev, did this deserve to go on to see us?
Well, I mean, I think...
Hold on. Street Fighter, The Legend of Ryu. Is that one we wanted after this? What do you think?
I mean, I think the answer is clear. Of course it deserves a sequel.
Yes, of course.
I can't believe we're not up to part 10 yet already. The Legend of DJ,
I'm surprised they didn't just quit cinema after this one, So.
Well, Kristen Kreuk did. We don't like making fun of actors.
We don't like making fun of actors. Okay, that's it. Follow along at F2F Pod. That's at F2, the number 2 F Pod. Follow us, F2 Pod. What do I say?
Like us there, like us everywhere.
Like us there,
rate,
like us
review.
everywhere. Rate, review, whatever you do, and join the tribe. Hit that subscribe on all the socials. You know what? Do more of the things that I say. I say like it, go like it. I say share it, go share it. You go review it. Actually, it would be pretty sweet if you reviewed at some point.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. We actually do have a fair amount, which is cool.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see more.
Unless you're like a huge Legend of Chun-Li fan and you're like mad at us that we didn't, please don't review. But otherwise.
yeah. Or the Chris Klein stands will come for us.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. The Oz heads. All right, I'm out. What a piece of shit. Oh my god. It's not one of those even like get angry at movies. I mean, sometimes it was, but it's just like a baffling, just amateurish.
Yeah.
Just what a $50 million waste.
Yeah. I don't know. We watched 2 Street Fighter movies, and like based on like maybe the most famous like fighting game of all time, and there's not like one good fight scene between the 2 of them.
It's crazy. Yeah, that's wild. We never mentioned we talked about Michael Clark Duncan twice in the last like 2 months.
Yeah,
and we barely talked about him here.
You know why? Because I like the dude, and I don't
Same.
want to like. It's like, why drag his name through the mud on this? You know?
No. I agree. He probably comes out the most unscathed.
Probably, yeah.
Even though they kill his character. Another one we didn't mention. We mentioned that Bison is killed, but then Balrog's killed too, and really Vega is seemingly killed too. I'm not sure about that.
I don't know. Yeah, again, well, like, I thought he was just hanging there, but given that we now know that Chun-Li's a serial killer, like maybe he's dead when he's hanging there.
Yeah. It is literally a Legend of Chun-Li because like her name and person.
Yeah, she's become
like
feared throughout the land.
Yeah, she's like Summer of Sam, you know.
Oh, you hear Chun-Li coming, you know you're about to die.
Yeah, what's the from The Wire?
Omar's coming.
Yeah, Omar's coming. Oh, Chun-Li's coming. Chun-Li's coming.